to this new episode of the Place Brand Leaders podcast, which I am recording from home today because we are in lockdown in Switzerland. And so if you hear any noise in the background, that might be my neighbors who are also working from home today. Apologies for that. But it's great to be able to record another episode, because we have a really important topic to talk about, which is the trends and priorities for place branders in 2021. And of course, the coronavirus pandemic has changed the way we live and work considerably, affecting every citizen and community anywhere on the globe, I would say. And as the world looks forward to a more positive 2021, economic developers, community builders, foreign direct investment and talent attraction agencies, and other place brand managers have a lot on their plate with respect to building an optimistic narrative for their country and city or region while facing tight budgets. So we asked our panel of place branding specialists what are the topics that will likely dominate the place branding agenda next year. And what I found especially noteworthy is that despite the many challenges that come with coping with the current public health situation, panel members also see 2021 as a year of opportunities for place branders. And I'll tell you more about this in a moment. So here are just some of my key takeaways from the panel. Let me know if those trends and priorities match your own observations, or if you are experiencing things differently at your location, which is, of course, possible. So hardly surprising, managing the effects of COVID-19 will be a key topic in 2021, both in terms of ensuring health protocols and with regard to reviving the economy and investing in community resilience. Unfortunately, environmentally and socially sustainable tourism might not be a priority in many regions this year, as getting local businesses up and running, so to ensure their economic sustainability, will be the more immediate concern. But he sees an opportunity in dialing up the attractions of our own locales and places. So there are enough regions that need a lot more investment in tourism-related places and activities. But again, funding might be tight. So place brand managers will need to double down on corporations and governments for additional ideas and investment. And another crucial point made by the panel is that country brands will face fierce competition from their peers. I would almost say that this also applies to cities and regions to some extent, because all are now eager to welcome people back to visit, study, or work there once it's possible. And moving to economic development, the global logistics system will change, according to the panel, which brings massive opportunities for some locations, so especially those perceived as safe and which demonstrated good crisis management and which remained accessible during the pandemic. But it will also be a disadvantage for others, of course. So this is something we also heard in our interview with Swiss economic development professionals over the last weeks, where the representatives of these business regions were all in all quite optimistic about the success of their regions and sharing that despite the pandemic, investment continued to happen. And this might also be because this is usually a multiple year endeavor. So it's not, the decision for the investment wasn't probably made in 2020 or even 2019. Maybe it was made in 2015. And the investment might finish in 2 years' time from now. So when they build factories and so forth. So this is more of a midterm endeavor. Back to the panel. Ed Burkhardt, who is the initiator of the Strengthening Brand America project, adds that shifts in work situations due to the pandemic will impact infrastructure investment choices. And I think this is an important point, because it will also then impact the attractiveness of locations within the supply chain. And Günther Seudanbay, who is based in Canada, also predicts that COVID-19 will have a lasting impact on the global logistics system. For instance, he told us that under normal circumstances, a country like Turkey would have been much more lucrative to European investments, and now it might be Eastern European countries that have a stronger case now, and also against China. So those countries could be more active in their place brand communications. One concern shared by various panel respondents is that short-term planning to boost economic activity bears the risk to hamper social and environmental sustainability at the expense of fast economic recovery. So this is what I mentioned earlier in the context of tourism, that there's a risk there, and this is problematic because all three pillars of sustainability, so environmental, social, and economic, are needed for healthy and competitive communities and business locations, especially because we have other crises on the horizon, compared to which COVID will feel like an easy one to solve, I think, especially the climate emergency and its consequences for people's livabilities, landscapes, and biodiversity. And indeed, Jeanette Hanna of Trajectory Brand Consultants in the United States predicts that places will come under more pressure from citizens and businesses to mitigate the effects of climate change. And especially in terms of tourism and ensuring places remain well livable. Quoting her, climate smart strategies for places are a must have in the coming year. This will take many forms, she tells us, from responsible tourism to green placemaking and other ways. And in this sense, she is very much in tune with Malcolm Allen, the president of Bloom Consulting, whose posts on place branding and climate change you might have seen on the placebrandobserver.com website. But there's also concern that memories are short, and all the worthy words that were written and spoken during the pandemic about responsible, slower, and more community-focused travel, for example, may fly out of the moral window when the opportunity to travel resurfaces. As Tom Bunkle of the Edinburgh-based Yellow Railroad Consultancy observes, destinations, airlines, hotels, and tour operators may be only too delighted to have any type of tourism as long as it's bringing money in to keep them afloat. So again, economic sustainability. So they might not necessarily concern themselves with responsible and sustainable tourism in the ecological sense. For him, millennials will be the most likely interested in sustainable tourism right now. So destination marketers might want to focus their responsible tourism messaging on them. Tom also predicts that funding for anything to do with destination management and marketing is going to be a critical topic in 2021, and many destinations might need to look for new funding mechanisms because the pandemic-induced recession will result in a considerably lower tax rate. Local and national governments will have other pressing social community imperatives, which will mean less public funding available for tourism than ever. So expect to see vigorous debates about tourism taxes, visa charges, licensing, and access charges for operators. But let's move on to some more opportunities, which this year also brings. And Andy Hoyne sees an opportunity for place branders to leverage from the strong community connections which developed during the lockdowns. Having brought neighbors and citizens together in unprecedented ways, I'm sure you experienced this also in your own community, which is quite amazing in a sense, because this is really new and wasn't like that at all before the pandemic, at least in most communities. Quoting Andy, so how we banded together during the various lockdowns around the world and how people stood up for health workers and so forth could represent an interesting opportunity. Because for a long time, social disconnection seemed to define modern living, people not knowing their neighbors. And now everyone is aware of shopping local and looking out for each other. Pushing this as a brand value will be useful for many places. For residential neighborhoods, he even sees it a great branding theme to explore. 2021 and the pandemic also present a fresh opportunity for towns and regions to attract talent because entrepreneurs and skilled people will be on the lookout for a safe, beautiful place with a supportive culture. And peripheral places can often offer this mix and should therefore increase their communications. So, towns and cities which are nearby, larger ones, for example. Like Todd Babiak, who leads the brand Tasmania team in Australia right now, mentioned that they'll be going after entrepreneurs and skilled people who might want to live in a safe, beautiful place with a supportive culture of artisanal enterprise. And I'm sure that he considers Tasmania to be just such a place. So, in fact, a grim year like 2020 might inspire people to take risks about the rest of their careers and lives. So, this is the moment to reach out to them and to convince them that they should consider your location to settle down for their next adventure. And Natasha Grant of the Institute for Identity in the UK shared a similar observation that during times of forced idleness, many people started small businesses using their hobbies or traditional skills. I agree with her that it would be interesting to see if place branders could harness, guide, or in any way support this new creativity to produce new cultural artifacts and lifestyle products that are characteristic of their place. Because these would reinforce place identity and would provide really good souvenirs for the future. And one observation which I found especially interesting is that from Erling Fossen of the Oslo region in Norway. He shared that the COVID-19 situation will transform our cities as crises before have. And he mentions the example of the cholera outbreak, which created parks and green lungs in cities. So COVID-19 will create more decentralized cities where you can fulfill all of your life's desires within a walking or biking distance of 15 minutes. At least that's his prediction. And this would be, of course, good news for the neighborhoods and for urban sustainability. So there's certainly no shortage of opportunities waiting to be seized this year. And the question will be whether location managers and place branders will focus on those or succumb to short-term promotional measures and advertising, trying to kickstart local economies. In any case, creative messaging and storytelling will be key, targeting audiences with different mindsets. So some will be keen to get back out there and enjoy themselves in crowds, and others will be more cautious and hesitant. And of course, place branders will have to reach out to both kind of audiences in a smart way. In an ideal world, as Robert Govers, who chairs the International Place Branding Association, points out, place leaders would have been using the current situation for community soul searching, finding belonging, virtual leadership, community collaboration, and so forth. In other words, fine-tuning their mid to long-term strategy. In reality, it takes enormous courage and strength to defy the pressure that place managers and economic developers will be under to come up with quick fixes to address the coronavirus pandemic, of course. At the most, that's certainly the scenario which Sebastian Zenker of Copenhagen Business School observes when he writes that currently it sounds more like how do we get back to the old normal instead of how should tourism look like for us and how to get there, or how should economic development look like. So this year is also going to be a testing one for place brand managers, forcing them to prove their value and necessity in the face of more immediate governmental concerns with the population's health and safety. For Natasha Grant, they could do so by rising above tourism, which they place branders might, rightly or not, perceive as their specialty, and helping governments at a more strategic level, reminding them of the core values that hold their nations and societies together. This in turn requires increased professionalism and increased best practice in expanding opportunities for place branding and urban professionals to pull more place levers. So get more kudos for your work, which is something that Christopher Heyer of To Think Now agency in Australia mentioned. And all this without losing sight of other ongoing trends, such as digital placemaking and making best use of virtual channels. Let me wrap it up with a quote from Natasha Grant, which I really like. She wrote, the overall challenge for this year is to make places come to people instead of people coming to places as before. Place brand managers could find creative ways to bring their places into people's homes around the world, for example, through online learning, entertainment, local produce, and being part of larger global conversations. So, did you find this overview of our panel's thoughts on trends and priorities in 2021 useful? Please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for joining me today here at the Place Brand Leaders podcast. If you have any questions or ideas also about the Place Brand Observer and how we can support your own work or location, please don't hesitate to contact me via the website placebrandobserver.com or by connecting on LinkedIn. My name is Florian Kaefer, and I'd like to thank our panel for sharing so many useful insights, which you will find in full on the website as well. And my thanks also to Alex Vladimirov for supporting this podcast as a producer.